Now, James Franklin didn't say anything controversial in his appearance on ESPN College GameDay, but Nick Saban, former Alabama head coach, went ahead and did. He said it was unfair as hell that Penn State fired Franklin.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions as it is game day. We are going to talk Penn State and Iowa, but we got to discuss James Franklin's appearance on ESPN College GameDay to start things off on another college football Saturday. My name is Zach Sako. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat as we are reacting to James Franklin speaking. Was the timing odd? Did anybody think this was odd? At least it was unprecedented, because I can't remember for the life of me a fired coach in the middle of the season making a public spotlight star appearance like this. This was obviously something that James Franklin wanted to do, probably felt that he needed to do, because his, at least his reputation seems to be not tanked, but tarnished to an extent. So let's start here. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me on the show. And we'll talk about Penn State, Iowa later on to wrap things up, because there is a game, believe it or not. But Franklin, 6 days, not even a week, after being fired by Penn State, goes on to ESPN College GameDay, the biggest show previewing college football on a week-to-week basis. And he didn't do anything that I wasn't expecting. I think if you follow Penn State, if you cover Penn State like I do, you were kind of expecting that Franklin was going to take the high road. I didn't think he was going to bash the university or anything like that, or say something controversial, because he still has a lot to lose here. All right. His reputation. I kind of viewed this as somewhat of an audition for him to potentially be a media personality if he doesn't find a job that he likes this time around. He's sitting on that $50 million buyout, so he doesn't lose any of that money if he goes the media route for a year. Dan Mullen did it right. It's certainly a possibility, but it does sound like he wants to get back into coaching. Let me talk about what Nick Saban said, because there wasn't really much that Franklin said to overanalyze. Well, we'll talk about what Franklin said, right? He wants to get back into coaching. He wants to win a national title. The athletic director, fired him, right? That was a decision the AD made that he said. But let's respond to Nick Saban, because he says it is unfair as hell that Penn State fired James Franklin. Nick Saban and James Franklin are friends. Franklin talked about how he would go to Saban and ask for pointers, that he would ask for advice, that he was just somebody he could go to. There is so much nuance here, right? I don't blame Saban for wanting to. Well, Saban's out. If he wanted the Penn State job, his chances of that are completely tanked. And based on him saying that, I don't think he does. He wouldn't say that if that was the case. Saban's too smart for that. But I think this was his chance to stand up for a friend, because Franklin wasn't saying anything like, yeah, I felt like I was betrayed, or I felt like I deserved another chance. I had done so much good for the university, which he did say. And that is true. That is objectively true. I don't think he's patting himself on the back and gloating that. I mean, 10-win seasons are good. The Rose Bowl win is good. The Fiesta Bowl, those are good things. But let's also not pretend that wasn't the goal at the end of the day. The goal wasn't to just go 10-2. The goal wasn't just to win a couple of New Year's Six Bowls. The goal, a national title, would have been great, but I still fall back on the fact that Penn State could never beat Ohio State. Penn State could never put itself into that top category. So to say that it was unfair, James Franklin said it right. Hey, decisions were made that other people, it happened for a reason, right? It happened for a reason. Okay. If Nick Saban kept losing to Georgia, kept losing to Tennessee, kept losing, it was the same story. It was the same narrative over and over and over again. And I feel like Nick Saban is smarter than that. I think he knows, but I think he wanted to go bat for somebody that he respects and he likes. It's okay to respect and like James Franklin. I do. I hope he does well. But Saban knows better. Saban knows that if the shoe was on the other foot in his case, if he couldn't beat Tennessee, if he couldn't beat Georgia, if he couldn't beat LSU, if he just kept losing to the same schools over and over and over again, and then Texas and Oklahoma, I know that he's retired and everything, but is speaking in hypotheticals. If Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC and they use Alabama as a stepping stone to get closer to the LSUs or the Georgias, do you think LSU fans and LSU boosters would have put up with that for as long? Probably not. Okay. So what Saban is doing is simply trying to protect Franklin. I don't think Franklin needs protection because I've already heard from people that just, hey, Franklin's still a good coach. We've talked to my counterpart at UCLA. They would take him. I've heard that Auburn is actually interested in James Franklin. Florida would be a destination. So Franklin's not hurting by any means. He doesn't need protected. He doesn't need babied or anything like that. So whatever, Saban's going to say what he's going to say. I think because it's still a show. It's still for the entertainment sake of it. There wasn't anything controversial. And that's why I go back to, this was odd. It was odd to do this interview right now. I understand the person Franklin likes being in the spotlight. So it's not odd for him to take something like this, to take an opportunity like this. But this wasn't a retirement. This wasn't, you ride off into the sunset type of situation. You were booed out of the stadium that you coached at for almost 12 years. And then you go on ESPN College GameDay to do what exactly? Because like I said, was this an audition for the media? Yeah, James Franklin is very good at speaking in public. I think he would be a great ESPN. Who knows? Maybe he was auditioning for College GameDay. I would like to see James Franklin do some media appearances for the next year or two, kind of because I want him out of the coaching game for a little bit since he's going to be an enemy of Penn State. Think about that for a second. James Franklin has so many connections now in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast region that it's not going to be fun going up against Franklin if he stays, if he goes to Virginia Tech. Even if he does go to Florida, Penn State's still going to have to battle that out. So I kind of want James Franklin to take maybe a little bit of a 1 to 2 year, take a 1 to 2 year hiatus and not coach for a little bit because he's not going to help Penn State. I'm sure he has an axe to grind. Franklin might not have said it outright, but he is definitely, he's livid. I got to imagine the guy is livid. You did win a lot. You won over 100 games, double-digit win seasons. You got close. You thought you were going to win a national title. Pennsylvania is your home. That's his home state. He grew up in the Poconos. Pennsylvania is his home. And then he got booed out of the stadium. He absolutely has an axe to grind. Don't tell me otherwise. Oh, he should be thankful that Penn State took a chance on him at the time. But you can't help feel some type of way. I don't blame Franklin if he does feel some type of way about all of this. And that's why you're seeing this media appearance for him to do this interview now, because this is extremely unprecedented. Is it weird for Franklin? Because I know the kind of person that Franklin is, just being around him for, specifically, covering the team with this podcast for the past 4 years. Yeah, this is something I would have totally expected because you'd never see anybody else do this, which is why it's unprecedented. But he said he thanked Penn State. He said Penn State was good to him and his family. He added some context that he was fired 15 minutes before the team meeting going into Sunday. So things were really thrown off, which is why, I don't know how I see Penn State going into this Iowa game, how focused they're going to be. That's going to be a very tough challenge for Terry Smith because the team liked Franklin. People are wrong to compare Penn State and UCLA to one another because UCLA probably, the team, the players did not want Deshaun Foster to coach them anymore. The players still wanted James Franklin to be their head coach. And that's understandable. Franklin's a very likable guy from the player perspective. He's going to land somewhere. He's going to land somewhere. He's not going to He's not going to go away. What kind of job he ultimately gets, he has the right to be patient, whether that's for Florida, if he thinks that's going to open up. I think Florida would be a match made in heaven for Franklin. But I know there's Lane Kiffin in Florida and everything. I know it's not so cut and dry there. There's going to be a lot of other dominoes to fall. Would he want to take a somewhat of a step back and go to UCLA because he was entertaining USC once upon a time? So we can discuss all of that, kind of what's next now for Franklin, what we think, are there more angles that we need to hit on from this media appearance for Franklin? We're also going to talk about Penn State versus Iowa. That is all coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, and we're going to dive into the live chat as well, so stay tuned. And today's episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5. That is SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays. You can try player props. You can even follow live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And lines are available for Penn State versus Iowa. The line has moved in the Hawkeyes' favor. -3.5 on the spread in favor of Iowa, minus 162 on the money line for the Hawkeyes, plus 136 if you're thinking Penn State for an upset here. The total is set at 40.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com and the FanDuel app. And new customers, when you bet $5, if that first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get started. And I do appreciate everyone joining me for a live reaction to James Franklin, ESPN College GameDay. Nick Saban, I don't blame him for going to bat for a friend. Franklin and Saban are friends, if you did not know this. I have friends in the live chat. Let's hear from all of you talking about what just happened. And remember, if you want to ask questions about Penn State, Iowa, we'll talk about that in the final segment to wrap things up. All right. Steven says, always about him to find the job that the job he never did good, never about that. I can't read today. Oh my goodness. And never giving a reason for the losses or how he failed. Will it cause you or sorry to the fans would have been nice. Okay. So speaking in hypotheticals there, geez, I had a little rough reading to early this afternoon here. So I get what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying, that maybe he should have taken some more responsibility and things like that. Franklin, with the way that things were going at Penn State, and just kind of just like, it's on me. It's on me. It's on me. It's kind of that defeatedness. I don't know what he's supposed to say in that point in time where he still needs to protect his reputation. Is it the honorable thing to do to, bear the brunt of it, the responsibility? Sure. Why not? But I think that I wasn't expecting him one way or another. I think that's why I think my expectations were pretty tempered, as like, is he going to say, yeah, I full responsibility for not winning a national championship, full responsibility for losing to UCLA and Northwestern. I don't really know what else he can say that kind of puts out that fire, so to speak. It is what it is at this point. It's why he's unemployed, why he doesn't have a job. No, that's going to be a choice. If he's going to be a media figure, you're going to have to listen to him if you choose to, because I could see him being in the same role that Dan Mullen was for the past few years. Franklin isn't winning a title anywhere. I will bet my house on it. It'll be interesting because college football is not getting any easier. And if you go to the ACC and the Big 12, okay, you might win some conference titles, right? I could see him winning conference titles at Virginia Tech. But if he plans to go to Florida and go back into the SEC, you got to go up against Georgia. You got to go up against LSU. You got to go up against, right, Alabama. If you stay within the Big 10, are you winning a title at UCLA? Probably not. So if Franklin even wants to get close to a national championship, it would be at the best case scenario for him would be if Brian Kelly moves on from LSU, because then you get the resources and the support you need. I don't know what's going on at Florida. I guess maybe that was just Urban Meyer. I personally always viewed Florida as a top 10, top 15 job, but maybe it's just a lot tougher to win there if you're not Urban Meyer. So, I mean, if Dan Mullen wasn't great. He was good, but he wasn't great. So I assume that, Franklin has ties to Florida, really good connections there. He would probably do well there. He would probably do well, but would it translate to 12-0, college football playoff runs? Would he make deep postseason runs? Probably not. I don't know that it's a guarantee one way or another, but it is very much more unlikely that he were not to win a national title somewhere else than he would be. LSU would be the best destination for him, so to speak. Yes, that is something. Yes, I don't think him and Pat Kraft are on good terms. There are rumors floating around, which we could very well discuss and get into that. Look, what's on the record and what's actually been reported. If you want my opinion, Franklin and Kraft had some sort of falling out, whether it was before the season, in the middle of the season. The athletic director being and you can look at this two ways. One, should Pat Kraft have been involved as much as he was? Because then that speaks on Franklin's inability or lack of an ability to run this football program. Why does Pat Kraft feel the need to inject himself so much into football operations when he's supposed to be managing all of and that's his job, is to manage the athletic department? But if he feels like he needs to be involved heavily in football and make personnel decisions and this and that and kind of nudge Franklin in a certain way, is that Kraft overstepping his boundaries, or is that because Franklin was failing to do his job? And I don't think there was. Here's the thing, though, and I mean, you read in between the lines of what Franklin wants to say or tries, or because he's not just going to outright say, I don't like Pat Kraft, or it's all Pat Kraft's fault, or something like that. But yeah, he doesn't mention Pat Kraft's name. Maybe that's because, most people aren't going to recognize Pat Kraft outside of, college football diehards. Penn State fans are going to recognize Pat Kraft. But do you think people in Athens, Georgia fans are going to be like, oh yeah, I know who Pat Kraft is. Yeah. Everyone knows, the Penn State AD. Everybody can recognize that for obvious reasons. But the relationship with Kraft and Franklin was not good, at least not at this point in time. And you have to go back to all the alignment and everything, lip service. That's how I look at it now. That you all weren't aligned. You were button heads to an extent. I'm glad that you saw things similarly, but that doesn't equate to alignment. And is that Franklin trying to manifest things that things will get better? Again, when this turned sour, I mean, winning cures everything, but they stopped winning. They stopped winning, and against not good teams. So if that's where it really, I would like to think that this doesn't happen overnight. This this decision is not made on a whim. Like, yeah, you lost 3 games, you're done. Because I agree with Saban. You won a bunch of games. You won bowl games. You got to the college football playoff semifinal under easier circumstances. But it wasn't just all of that. It wasn't just going 4-21 in big games, so to speak. It's not just about, oh, you lost those games. It was just that you never, every time you knocked on the door of being elite, you got turned away. That was the problem. And then Oregon walks into the Big Ten and just goes right past you and uses you to get to the elite conversation. Okay? That is the issue. Losing to Ohio State is not fun. Losing to Michigan is not fun year in and year out. But the problem is that these schools immediately walk into the Big Ten. And that's the thing. Losing to Oregon is one thing because they're still a reputable program. They're in a good spot. They should be competing for college football playoff appearances at a minimum. And then UCLA walks all over you, right? Okay, you beat USC, but what does that matter? If you can't, you're only as good as your next game. Nick Saban can't say that. He can't say that, oh, it's unfair as hell. When if he went on a 3-game losing streak, most of Alabama would call for his job. Okay? And these are the same people in the media profession that were so quick to point out all of James Franklin's flaws before, hey, you know what? He did win a Fiesta Bowl, because now you're saying that, but back before it wasn't. Well, remember, he won a Rose Bowl. There was none of that was ever prefaced. Whenever they talked about James Franklin and Penn State, it was, you'll be good, but you'll never be great. You'll be good, you'll never be elite. You're just going to win your 10 games. You'll lose your main ones. You'll lose the important ones, and then we'll forget about you. That's always what it was. And now it's, hey, remember that time when they were in the Big Ten championship? Remember the time when they won a couple of New Year's Six bowls? Remember the time that James Franklin, when he took over, it was an extremely dark time for the university, and it was never about that. It was always about Penn State is never going to be better than anything good. And why we are here today is because Penn State sees that differently. Penn State believes that if we're spending $3 million plus for a defensive coordinator, if we're spending as much as we are in NIL to make a roster, to build a roster, we shouldn't lose to Oregon at home in the whiteout. We shouldn't lose to UCLA and Northwestern back to back. A different coach with those resources would be able to get the job done. That is what Penn State is saying. But Nick Saban, probably more people at ESPN, most of the national media probably say it's okay. And they do. They're showing it. It's because it's what they think of Penn State. They see Penn State as a 10-2 program. It has nothing to do with James Franklin. It's about what they think about Penn State in regards to what kind of success they can achieve, regardless of who's the head coach. So it's not so much, it's really being disrespectful about Penn State. It's because they view Penn State no better than a 10-2 program, and that Penn State should be lucky to have a coach like James Franklin. It was maxed out. I'm gonna take a break here, and we're gonna talk some Penn State, Iowa. You know, there's still a season to play. There's still a lot to prove if you're the Nittany Lions. And Terry Smith. Terry Smith is auditioning to be a head coach. But they view Penn State, most national media figures view Penn State as, well, you're slightly above the middle of the Big Ten. Again, it was all maxed out. What more do you need? You got all your seniors. You hand selected every single coach, and you still couldn't, because that was always well, I didn't get to pick my top defensive coordinator candidate. I didn't get to pick my top offensive coordinator candidate. Ohio State has this. I don't have this. You got that. And you failed more so. You didn't even meet the threshold, because if they beat UCLA and Northwestern, Franklin still has a job. And that's why we're here. Reacting to a media appearance from James Franklin. All right, I've rambled quite a bit about that media appearance from James Franklin. Let's actually talk ball, X's and O's. Penn State, 3.5-point underdog against Iowa. Well, they were 3.5-point favorites actually going into this game. We'll wrap up with what to expect from the Nittany Lions against a pretty good Iowa team coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIH Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And again, thank you so much for joining me here on the live show. So Penn State, Iowa, just in general, what's next for Penn State? What's next for James Franklin? To put a lid on all of this, this is going to go on for a while. We're in the middle of the season. Penn State's not going to find out who its head coach is going to be for quite some time, till the end of the season. Matt Rule ended up losing against Minnesota. So is that the nail in the coffin for Rule to his alma mater? Let's talk ball for a moment, reset back to the present. Penn State and Iowa. I'm surprised that Penn State was a 3.5-point favorite when this game opened initially. At Penn State was actually preseason. It was 10.5 points in favor of the Nittany Lions. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, right? But then they were still a field goal favorite, and FanDuel they didn't have that James Franklin was getting fired on their bingo card in their assessment, but Drew was out for the season, right? They had all that news, and I will take credit because I think I influenced the lines to now where Iowa is a field goal, or at least I started the line movement anyway, because I posted about it and I said, this is a little interesting that FanDuel has Penn State as a 3.5-point favorite. And then immediately it swings over to Iowa being a 2.5-point favorite, now pushed to a 3.5-point favorite. I also think it's interesting that the total has gone up to 40.5. Because I had this game, I have Penn State losing 20-17. It has nothing to do with, it's a backup quarterback in Iowa again. It's just take one Roberson all over. Ethan Grunkemeyer. It's not that. It's not that at all, which is why I think the Penn State, there were people that were comparing, Penn State's just UCLA. They're just going to be like UCLA. Not right now. Maybe in a couple of weeks, could I see them going toe-to-toe with Ohio State? Sure. Could I see them going toe-to-toe with Indiana at home? Absolutely. But right now, when you're still 6 days through, again, the team did not want James Franklin to be fired. It is unfair. It's actually disrespectful to compare Penn State to UCLA, because UCLA, the players did not want to play for Deshaun Foster anymore. There was no one there to take Deshaun Foster's side, which is why it is interesting when James Franklin says this was the AD's decision, because not everybody was on board at Penn State. Were there more people that were against James Franklin than there were after these few games? Yes. But it wasn't 100%. You sit down 100% of people at a round table and say, all right, what's going on with James Franklin as a head coach? And it wasn't 100, all 100%. There was still a divide that, hey, the coaching staff probably would have wanted to still say Franklin's our boss. The players probably select people, whether that's the board of trustees, or I don't know how Neely Bendapudi, the president, feels about all this. She's the president of the university, but she's clearly involved in athletics to an extent, since James Franklin always refers back to her. I don't remember him doing this with Eric Barron when he was the president. With that being said, this team is not in a spot to be overly motivated or ready to run through a brick wall. It's still different to them. And I didn't say that. I probably should have let off the show with this, because it is strange. It is strange to me seeing James Franklin do anything outside of being Penn State's head coach right now. This is all we've known as whether you're on the Penn State beat or you're a Penn State fan or you're a college football fan, all you know is James Franklin being Penn State's head coach for the past decade plus. So it's if it feels brand new to me, if it feels strange to me, how do you think the team's going to feel? How do you think the team's going to go out there? And this isn't a home game. This is at Kinnick. Teams do not do well at Kinnick Stadium. That is quietly a top 10 place to play in terms of a hostile environment. So I'm not expecting Penn State to come out ready to run through a brick wall. Their head coach was just fired. Drew Aller was just lost for the entire season. And you're going into this game with a redshirt freshman quarterback. You're going in with a second-year quarterback who hasn't started a game and nearly threw one got called back, but in theory, he threw 2 interceptions on his first 2 passes in his career. I like Grunkemeyer. That's not me criticizing him, but it is me acknowledging you're losing your head coach. You're going to somebody who doesn't have true head coaching experience, a quarterback who doesn't have true in-game experience against Iowa, who is strong in areas where Penn State is weak. And I'm still saying 20-17. It would not surprise me if Iowa wins by double digits. I'm kind of going off of the fact that, hey, Penn State is still really talented. There is a reason that FanDuel opened this game reopened the game still in favor of the Nittany Lions by 3.5 before the public got involved, before I moved the lines. I have that kind of influence, guys. Yeah, I do. No, but that's what I'm going off of, is that Penn State's still talented. You still have, I don't think Andy Kotelnicki's a bad coach. I don't think Jim Knowles is a bad coach. I just don't think all of the puzzle pieces fit together. When you look at it, hindsight's 2020, but now that we see it through 6 games, yeah, you didn't have the right players in Jim Knowles' defense, and the system does take time to learn. Ohio State fans weren't kidding. It takes 2 to 3 years. Year one's been very rough in Jim Knowles' system. Guys playing out of place, guys not fitting the personnel groups that are necessary, guys like Zane Durant taking a step back when he's just a good football player, but he doesn't fit in the defense. AJ Harris, Zane Durant, all of these players are not playing up to their caliber, and they didn't just become bad football players overnight. Sometimes you just don't fit within a scheme. And that's understandable. I mean, people make that criticism about Drew Aller and Andy Kotelnicki, and Andy Kotelnicki was tailoring his system to an extent to help. I know I say that, and it doesn't look right, but he was tailoring his offense to benefit Aller, and it still wasn't enough. So Singleton takes a step back, right? The transfer portal wide receivers aren't living up to their expectations. Losing Tyler Warren was that big of a deal. What happened to the offensive line? I don't get it. So to say that this team's going to rebound and play with passion and fire, it's going to look rough in the first half, in my opinion. I think it's going to look rough. First-time starter, first-time head coach, Kinnick Stadium. Iowa is very stout on both sides of the football in the trenches, particularly on the offensive line. So I see why this game's trending over in the total, because Iowa should be able to move the ball on the ground effectively. And then if you sell out for the run, if you're Jim Knowles and you dedicate 8-9 guys to the box, Iowa's just going to do what they've done in the past, and they're just going to leak a tight end out of the backfield, or leak a tight end off the line of scrimmage into the backside of the football field, and he'll be wide open on a play action pass. Here's what Penn State has going for them, and I don't like using injuries as a, hey, you can benefit from this player not being 100%, but Mark Gronowski, the starting quarterback for Iowa, Penn State's just been hit so many times now with dual threat QBs. He's not a speedster. I'm not here to argue that he's a read option quarterback, but if he was healthy, he'd carry the ball 12, 13, 14 times this game. Because, I mean, Iowa was unsure if he was going to even play the next month, 2 months, and maybe he was out for the season. The knee injury looked bad, but he's playing through it because he's tough as nails. Who knows if he gets hurt in this game? I'm not trying to advocate for it, but it's something to be aware of, that their quarterback is not 100%. And he would run the ball more, which would hurt Penn State's defense. So that has that going for them. But this offensive line for Iowa was the best in the country. Penn State made UCLA's offensive line look like it was top 10. UCLA's offensive line was objectively the worst. They were bottom 5 in the FBS. So Penn State did that for UCLA. Imagine how Iowa is going to look. So 20-17 is probably not going to be the score at the end of the day. Iowa should score more points. Penn State will be playing from behind. I think I want to respect the effort, because the key that I'm looking for here, I don't need Penn State to win today as much as I would like them to. I want them to win. Obviously, it would make things go much better for Terry Smith in this audition to be the head coach. I want to see passion. What happens when you're down? If you go down by double digits, are you going to fight? Are you going to scratch? Are you going to claw your way back? Because it was unacceptable to see Penn State not give as much effort in those games against Northwestern, UCLA, and Oregon. It seemed like they weren't playing with as much fire, without effort. And I think that's why they lost. It was lackadaisical. They were missing tackles, right? They weren't being out talented. They were losing because they just kept making self-inflicting mistakes. Don't do that. Have Iowa beat you. If they beat you, great. Honestly, that's understandable. So I am not expecting a Penn State win. I will be surprised if Penn State wins this game. I'm expecting them to keep it close and respectable, but that's my opinion. Let's still enjoy the game regardless. This is a great opportunity for Grunkemeyer. It's a great opportunity for the guys that are going off to the NFL to figure out their draft stock, to boost because everybody except for Katron Allen and Dennis Sutton have taken a hit in their draft report cards. So you got a lot to play for. I don't want to see anybody quit on the rest of the season, because there is individually, there's a lot to be played for at this point in time. So that is where I will end things here. This is a live pregame show, if you will, for Penn State and Iowa, but also important to talk about what James Franklin and Nick Saban had to say about this situation. Penn State's going to have an interesting coaching search. I don't think outside of Nick Saban and John Gruden, I do legitimately think that, and maybe a Marcus Freeman or a Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, right? Those names are not realistic, but Urban Meyer, Kalen DeBoer, Mike Elko, and Kurt Signetti is now off the board officially, but make them say no to you. Make them get that contract extension that says, no, they're not going to be linked to Penn State, because I've noticed a lot here that everybody is saying, oh, I like where I'm at, but nobody is saying no to the Penn State job when they're asked about it. So we'll keep an eye on that, right? My name is Zach Seiko. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, thank you so much for joining me here early on a Saturday to talk some college football, to talk some Penn State Nittany Lions football. Game is at 7 p.m. Kinnick Stadium on Peacock. Make sure you have a subscription to that if you don't, to watch tonight's game. And we will have live analysis for away games. We do live shows at halftime to analyze what's going on in about 15 to 20 minutes, a brief reaction there. And then we'll have a live post-game show as this one goes final. Penn State, Iowa, 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And be sure to be subscribed to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss any of this coverage. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for the support on the show. We'll be talking to you very soon.